Good evening and welcome to the Millis School Committee meeting of October 25th, 2022. My name is Stephen Catalano. I am the chairperson. I'd like to start with roll call. Ms. Gibbons, secretary.
Here.
Ms. Briggs.
Here.
Mr. Conroy. Here. Ms. Roach.
Here.
We have a teacher rep, Ms. Copese is here. Henry Keegan, the student rep, is here. Mr. Mullaney, the superintendent, and Terry Wiggin, the director of school finance and human resources. Before I begin, I want to announce that this meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on Mondays at 7 p.m. on Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 37. All meeting videos are also posted to the Millis Public Schools website under School Committee. All videos are also available on YouTube. All school committee minutes and agendas can be found on the school committee page of the Millis Public Schools website. Persons wishing to speak during open session must sign in before the meeting. Before the meeting starts, comments are not to exceed 3 minutes in time. Individuals may not name students, staff, or parents. All topics for discussion must be limited to those items listed on the evening's agenda, and all comments must be directed to the chair. The committee may not respond to public comments. It shall be their decision to discuss issues at a later date. All times on the agenda are approximate. And do we have anyone signed in for open session? No. Would you like to look at the list again? No. Okay. Someday. Student reps. Mr. Keegan, would you like to come up and do your presentation?
As you know, it's getting to the end of the fall sports season, so teams are starting to do their senior nights, like girls soccer, who had their senior night last week home. Boys soccer is having their senior night right now against Dedham, and girls volleyball is having their senior night tomorrow. And for the end of the fall seasons, we're having Spirit Week for homecoming, and Spirit Week is having themes, like for clothes. Like people wear clothes for themes, and the themes are USA Day was today, Hawaiian, Groutfit, and Millis Pratt. And also for Spirit Week, there are lunch games that happen, which are cornhole, egg toss, spike ball, donut on a string, and bobbing for apples. This Friday, the football homecoming game is playing, and dance is the following day, Saturday, in the gym. And we're just getting to the end of quarter one for the high school, and it ends Friday, November 4th. When you guys were walking in, if you looked around at the school, there are signs up in every hallway for suicide prevention made by the Active Minds organization who had their Spirit Week last week. And for my experience right now, I'm doing a lot of interactive projects in my classes, like Ms. Copese's chemistry class and my AP Human Geography class. And that's all I have.
Your reports are excellent, Henry.
Thank you.
We appreciate them very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Copese, tough shoes to follow. Tough shoes?
Tough shoes to fill.
Tough shoes to fill. You got it, right? She got it.
Hello.
Good evening.
People are very invested in the school committee notes this week, so get ready.
Oh, boy.
All right.
Feedback.
So, coming from the CFB, we had Fire Prevention Week last week. So, all of the classes were visited by firefighters Wilson and Green, and they had developmentally appropriate instruction about fire safety and what to do in the event of a fire. And then, of course, that culminated with the huge open house at the firehouse the other weekend, so that was lovely. There's going to be the Trunk or Treat and Book Fair events happening on Friday evening, October 21st, so that would have been last Friday. I did not get to attend. They had about 200 students attending with their families. They received candy, bought books, and watched movies. That sounds like fun. Teresa Heslin and Jessica Peterson have been selected as the two parent representatives to serve on the CFB School Council. So we're excited to have them joining. And Mr. Colazzo's third grade immersion class is starting a virtual exchange with a school in Spain. They're going to video conference and have meetings with the Spanish class and exchange letters as well. And Millis Destination Imagination is excited to announce that we are combining with Holliston this year. And they're excited to see how that kind of manifests. In the middle school, we have our first annual pumpkin stroll happening Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. It is a family event that will have features cider donuts that Tangerinis has donated. There will be the pizza truck, plus all of the pumpkins that have been decorated. The students will be decorating their pumpkins Wednesday afternoon, which is tomorrow, in the cafeteria. And this is a no-cost event. So it's been arranged by Mr. Dupree and others so that there's absolutely no financial obligation to attend. Of course, if people want to donate, we're happy to. They've also had their Spirit Week upstairs this week. So we've had Beach Day, Crazy Hat Day, Wacky Wednesday. I'm not quite sure what that's going to bring tomorrow. Pajama Day and Millis Pride Day, which of course corresponds to Millis Pride Day down here that Henry mentioned, culminating in our pep rally on Friday. The grade 8 are working on their infamous Thanksgiving boxes, so they're excited about that. They will be decorating on the 20th and the 31st, and if anybody has any donations, they're happy to take them. The 6th graders are finishing up a book called Count Me In by Varja Bajaj, and they're discussing and looking at the positive and negatives of social media and a sense of belonging. The student at council, this is a fun one. They shared their appreciation for the bus drivers on Friday morning with student-created signs, coffee, and gifts provided by the principal. And the students were pretty happy starting their day by acknowledging their bus drivers. And considering the lack of bus drivers out there, I know we want to keep all the ones we have. So that's pretty exciting. Oh, yoga has kicked up again. The 7th and 8th grade will be beginning their yoga program, helping to learn how to deal with stressful situations using breathing techniques and small movements. And the 7th grade science classes had a speaker who came in and talked about monarch butterflies and milkweed. I don't know about you guys, when I was a kid, we were always making ornaments out of the milkweed pods. Like, I feel like every Girl Scout meeting I went to, every science class I went to, I think I still have some on my Christmas tree. In the high school, we have some congratulations going out to TV production students. Kayla Dulac and Brianna Dulac, and their PSA Can't Stop Motion has been selected as one of the top 3 videos in the junior-senior category for the MassDOT Safe Streets Smart Trips High School Video Contest. They'll get to attend the conference at the Boston Park Plaza. And Daisy Lyons is having her video that we heard about last spring screened at the Aquarium Theater this weekend. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, you can go ahead and email Danielle. She can give you more details. And then in other fun Daisy notes, Daisy is participating in the Photonics Text Training Program at Stonehill College. So she is being underwritten by the company Opticos, who is doing a work exchange with her. So she'll do a one-year paid work job for them when she finishes the program. So she goes to Stonehill College 3 nights a week, attends 3 hours of science instruction and being trained in photonics. And when she graduates in May, she will be a fully trained photonics tech. And if you're not sure what photonics are.
Good, I was just going to ask.
So,
Thank you, I was waiting.
No, I was getting there, don't worry. Photonics is sort of the next generation of fiber optics. So when fiber optics was built, it was using packets of light to send information. So photonics is literally using photons to send information. So it's currently an emerging industry. There aren't enough techs in the world. So she's actually the first high school student attending this program when they started it. And so that's pretty exciting. So she goes to school all day here, works at Panera, makes videos, and then goes to Stonehill College at night. So she was very excited to get her license, as were her parents, because they don't have to drive her anymore. We had our September Student of the Month winners. So grade 9 was David Cranton. Grade 10 was Matthew Clark. Grade 11 was Kayla Dulac. It's been a good week for her. And grade 12 was Aiden Mahoney. Last Friday, in addition to the exciting trunk or treat event over at CFB, Mr. Fallon arranged and hosted Andre Strong Bear Heart Gaines Jr. of the Nipmuc Nation to come in. He's a cultural steward and a speaker, a dancer, and so we had a full high school assembly, which culminated in quite literally every student in the building participating in some native dance, ultimately ending up in the gymnasium. And the feedback from the students has been positively wonderful about it. It's been a really nice buzz. So there's pictures in the high school newsletter if you want to see more about that. Some classroom notes, as Henry mentioned, term 1 is coming to a close for us. Miss Young's class has been doing a real-world activity around paying off credit card debt. So they've been calculating, when you pay the minimum, when you do the interest payments, like how long is it going to take you to pay off that $300 thing you charged if you only pay $25 a month? Mr. Panciaco's grade 9 immersion classes have been using a variety of software options to build models of their dream houses, utilizing their Spanish vocabulary. Miss Cheney's environmental science classes have been dissecting owl pellets, which has been a really big hit there as they've been kind of literally getting their hands dirty finally, going outside and seeing what the owls are eating. The 10th graders, again under the tutelage of Mr. Fallon, but also incorporating Mr. Caulfield, will be doing their Veterans Day interviews on November 9th. So they bring the veterans in, and the students have the opportunity to talk with them. If there's anybody out in the community who would like to volunteer to be part of this event, please let Mr. Dave Fallon at the high school know. We're always looking for some veterans. And our STEAM Scholar Spotlight this week is on Ella Bender. And she is looking at the potential overconsumption of oral analgesics by teenagers and starting to look at gathering some data on how much oral, Tylenol, ibuprofen students are consuming and educating them about the other options as opposed to oral analgesics, so topicals, patches, heat, all of those kind of things. So that's pretty interesting for this. And in clubs and activities, as you know, we've got Spirit Week happening. We've got our pep rally on Friday. We're very excited about that. And then 2 weekends ago, we had the Merritt Haunted Hayride, and multiple high school groups manned scare stations. So we had a group of freshmen. We had girls soccer, Leo's, Tripsickery, and Chem Club were all there hosting scare stations, and it was a great event, I think. And finally, in high school activities, the Chem Club went apple picking at Tangerini's, which is really apple picking up. They graciously allow us to come in after the apples have been denuded from the trees, and we get to pick up what's left on the ground. The students always have this initial response of there's nothing there. I'm like, dig a little deeper. And then when they find a good one on the ground, they're super excited. So if you walk by my room, these scents of applesauce are wafting out. So we are making applesauce and then employing gas laws to do the canning of the apples. So kind of some old world skills. Ties has had a busy 2 weeks. So we are excited because they've had a student successfully dual enroll in the Bridgewater State Excel program out of Ties. So that is great news. We've got multiple students out working at the Millis Fire Station, Bethany House, the police station, Brothers Market, and Shaw's. They've been to the Fairmont Fruit Farm in Franklin, Stone's Public House, Patriots Hall of Fame, so they've been out there kind of checking out the world. They have a trip planned in November to go to the Railers hockey game. And then they had a great open house, which was basically student run. Finally, parent-teacher conferences are coming. It's every parent's favorite time of the year. So there are the multiple dates. The Clyde Brown and the middle school have the early release days on Wednesday and Thursday next week. And then Clyde Brown has evening on Thursday, and looks like the middle school has evening on Wednesday. The high school has early release on Tuesday afternoon for our conferences, and then our evening conferences are on the 17th. And I think one of the positives out of COVID is that, and I know this personally, I'm happy that we have the in-face as well as the virtual options for parent-teacher conferences. I know last year I had a lot more conferences than I had when it was just in person, having both options. So we're very happy to still have those options. So that's what's going on around town. Any questions?
There's a lot going on.
There's a
What
great
do
going
the owls eat?
They eat small animals.
But only, are they
They
just
are carnivores, yes. So what happens is they eat the mouse. They eat it whole, and it goes down. And so obviously only so much can be digested. So the owl pellet is sort of the undigested refuse that passes out. So when you open up an owl pellet, you can get literally all the bones that were consumed. So you can reconstruct skeletons. It's really fascinating.
If there was a mouse eating applesauce,
Oh my God.
could he eat both?
He
Or
would
she
eat both, and probably as he digested the mouse, the owl would probably incorporate some of the, because applesauce is basically digested apple at that point, other than a little bit of fiber that again would be in the owl pellet.
Can we have pictures next meeting?
Of the owl pellets or a mouse eating applesauce? Bring the mouse.
No, not the mouse. I'd like to see the owl pellets.
I'll see if I can get some. I don't know if she has any. I don't know if she
Careful
has any
sending
more.
it on Google.
You want me to just bring you?
Somehow we're gonna get in trouble.
I'll just bring you an owl pellet.
No, you could just show me a picture.
Okay, I'll see if I can
Can
find
you
one.
see the whole animal?
Well, so when you open
I'm
it,
totally intrigued. by
you've
that.
never done this?
No.
Okay.
I know owls. I've never.
Okay. So
their
the
stat
the
before.
pellet comes out and it's like a
What did
little.
you see on Orchard Street at
It's
3
like
in the
are you
morning? Don't
listening?
count.
It's a little round oval. So when you open it up, you have all of the little separate bones. So you kind of have to be like a forensic scientist. You have to like reassemble the skeleton. It doesn't like come out fully formed. It's like all broken down in its little pieces.
Very cool.
Excellent.
So I'll tell Miss
You
Cheney.
don't want any applesauce too while you're at it?
I'm thinking we're going to get mixed apples.
I'm excellent
Yeah,
at making
right.
applesauce. I've been doing.
Yes.
I've got an applesauce press that was my great grandmother's. So
I feel pressured into eating applesauce.
You don't
Sure.
have to, it's
We'll have
okay.
an applesauce meeting at some
we'll
point.
have an applesauce meeting. I'll just give some to Jack and he can bring it home to you.
Thank you, Ms. Coates.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
There's a lot going on this morning.
There is. It's getting back to normal.
Yes,
Very
it
nice.
feels that way. All right, action items. There's only one action item. One is to the consideration to approve the October 11th, 2022 school committee meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Briggs.
I make a motion to approve the October 11th school committee meeting minutes.
Second.
A motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next is time and learning. We're going to review the 2022 MCAS results.
Actually, I was hoping that I could do the district, go out of order
Oh,
a
okay,
little
yeah,
bit.
sure.
And do the district report first, the district improvement plan.
Please do.
Because some of what Maureen will talk about with the MCAS, we use some of that information.
You got it.
As,
Actually, I think you may have said that in your memo. I apologize.
okay, so, So the district improvement plan is kind of the overarching set of goals for the entire district. And in the meetings ahead, we'll be hearing from individual schools with their school improvement plan, and their goals align with the district improvement plan goals. And so this is kind of a broad overview. In the packet, there is the complete district improvement plan, and this is, some of the highlights, but certainly if you have any questions on any aspect of the plan includes goals, action steps, and responsibility, and what we will view, what we will look at to determine how we've done on the goal, what our progress has been. So just as this is a district document, an overarching document, just a reminder of our district vision. Millis Public Schools are respected for high academic standards, committed to social responsibility, and dedicated to inspiring every student to achieve personal excellence. Mission is the Millis Public Schools is firmly committed to developing students as independent, lifelong learners and leaders who will contribute to a changing and complex society. One of the things we think we can excel at in Millis because of our size is personalizing learning, and this has been something that we focused on for many years now, and I would hazard to say we've been pretty successful with our personalized learning. So the overarching goal for personalization in Millis, we honor each student as an individual learner, recognizing that students have their own learning styles, interests, passions, challenges to learning, strengths, identities, and skills. We engage, support, and challenge all students through varied and culturally responsive instructional approaches that help students take ownership of their learning. Students are afforded voice, choice, and flexibility in how they learn and are allowed to demonstrate their understanding in various ways to improve student well-being and ensure that they are future ready. So, that's our intent for personalized learning. This year, the overarching goals for the Millis Public Schools provide rigorous, challenging learning experiences that promote academic growth for all students, implement high-quality curriculum using instructional strategies rooted in evidence-based best practices, support student physical and mental health and wellness, develop and sustain a culture of belonging and dignity for all students, and develop a 3-year strategic plan with input from all stakeholders. So the first goal, rigorous, challenging learning experiences. In terms of rigor, I think you'll recall last year at Clyde Brown we did a lot of work on the literacy curriculum. A literacy program has been adopted, so teachers are working really hard over there with the Wit and Wisdom Foundations and Haggerty programs, and all of those programs have been identified by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as high-quality programs. In the math department in the high school, they are implementing the Reveal Math program, which again, another instance of our teachers having high-quality curriculum materials. So there are some new curriculum programs in use, and that means a lot of work for teachers, but our sincere belief is that these new programs will result in better performance and higher academic achievement for students. World language curriculum frameworks have been updated, and so the world language teachers, our Spanish teachers, working on those new frameworks and aligning our courses to those frameworks, and Mrs. Knowlton has been able to obtain some generous grants to help with professional development and things like that. Middle school, high school is working on aligning writing and research skills. High school continues to work on the vision of a graduate. What we expect a kid with a Millis High School diploma is going to know and be able to do, and what skills and habits they'll have leaving here. And we'll be implementing, we are implementing the EL curriculum that was developed last year. Second goal, implement a high-quality curriculum using instructional practices rooted in evidence-based best practices. So those high-quality curriculums that we're instituting over in Clyde Brown and in high school math and so forth, a big component of that is teacher training. So we'll continue to provide professional development. We want to continue the training on the new curriculum materials, the various modules that come with those curriculum programs. We want to continue to support peer observation at all schools, teachers watching other teachers teach, and having discussions about teaching and learning. And it's really helpful to teachers to have another set of eyes in their classroom, and we want to encourage that. It's a voluntary program, and we want to make opportunities available for teachers to do that. And we will continue with our administrative team paired non-evaluative walkthroughs where pairs of administrators will visit classrooms and observe, and it's not really an evaluation of the teacher in the classroom. It's more about the discussion that happens between the administrators to help us as administrators come to some agreement on what is high-quality teachers, what strategies are most effective to observe things like, are kids engaged, what's the level of discourse, what's the task that the kids are being asked to do, because in a classroom, that's the most important thing. What are the kids doing, and what's the level of rigor in that activity, in that task? Supporting student physical and mental health and wellness. We want to continue to support our nurses and health officers, and hopefully they'll be, doing more than just testing kids for COVID and things like that. And so far this year, that's been the case. They've been able to they're dealing with more normal things. We want to provide our counseling staff with up-to-date training and resources, certainly support positive classroom and school cultures. High school's continuing to work with the JED Foundation, and the JED partnership with schools has been extended. Originally, it was a 2-year partnership, and now it's a 3-year partnership, so we certainly benefit from that. And we want to collaborate with the town social worker to support our kids and families. So far, that has been an incredible resource for us in the schools. The town social worker has done some great work with kids and with families, it's been really something that's really enabled us to, help families beyond the school hours. Develop and sustain a culture of belonging and dignity for all students. We want to continue to support classroom and school and district activities that are inclusive. We talk a lot about the changing demographics in town, and we want to make sure that kids of various backgrounds feel like this is their school, and in the curriculum they see themselves, or they see content that is relevant to them. We want to continue to look at school data to address any areas that there might be gaps and things like that, whether that's achievement gaps or opportunity gaps. And last year, when I presented my report of findings for my superintendent entry plan, I presented a lot of that data, and we want to continue to do that. And we want to continue professional learning on equity and inclusion. And then the final goal is to develop a 3-year strategic plan with input from all stakeholders. This would be a longer-term plan where, hopefully by this time next year, what I'm presenting is not the district improvement plan. It's a set of goals that we have, a vision down the road, and each year it's just an action plan to address, how we're going to reach those goals. We've already done some of that work. We did it on, in our opening meetings with all staff at the beginning of the year, where we had teams of all Millis employees, teachers, paras, bus drivers, administrative assistants, cafeteria workers, all work together in heterogeneous groups to see what their vision is of our schools and what they think is important for us moving forward. We want to develop a theory of action as the basis for this strategic plan, and then we'll develop strategic objectives, which will be long-term, long-term objectives to reach those goals. And that is, the kind of the highlights.
So could you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
So is this strategic plan just an internal document within the schools? Your stakeholder groups are your faculty and staff?
Very good question. No, it goes beyond that. We'll be sending things out to families, surveys. We've already done some work with students because some of this stuff is aligned with, for example, the vision of a graduate in a high school where they talk about core values. But yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We will be reaching out to the community.
Even though we have, as a committee, have talked about doing a strategic plan for the committee, and we've had some starts and stops, I think there's something to be said for a conversation amongst the budget piece that's directly tied to the learning and to your curriculum and long-term, that we may want to do a little focus group. I don't know, do you have a facilitator, or are you facilitating it yourself?
Right now, it's kind of like the administrative team is kind of taking this on.
So maybe we can have a conversation, because I think there's a budget piece to this.
Yeah.
This costs money, and what's the long, and then we have to do some internal, but they should be
Right,
close
yeah,
in
they're
time.
aligned.
I would go do all the other groups first and focus on that first, and then if there's time and there's energy, we can do this group. I think it would not hurt to look at the big picture, because a lot of what you're talking about, there's gonna be costs involved.
Right, right, and it's cost over
decisions.
time.
Right. So it'll help us in our plan. Any other questions for the super?
I guess just on, is 3 years enough time?
It's a good question, but I think, I hate to blame COVID for everything, but I think if we had a 5-year plan that we enacted in 2019, it would have, we would have had to redo it. And so I think, we might find that the 3-year plan, we extend to 5 years,
Or just even in the, you set these goals or these strategic objectives, being realistic about, it's kind of you don't want to, do you pull back on what the objective is because you can't get there in 3 years? Or do you set one and have there be milestones that fill in the 3 years,
Right.
knowing you want to get to here, but in a 3-year window, we set our own milestones to get, as opposed to, we'll never get out there in 3 years.
Right, yeah.
And so then you just rail it all back, and really all you're doing is setting short-term goals that you hope get you to a different place.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's kind of the point of the yearly kind of like action steps.
Yeah.
But I certainly agree that, if the goals that we determine are worthwhile, we're going to want to, if we're moving on the right path, we're going to want to extend that.
Anyone else? We good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan.
And Maureen come up a lot of the data that informs how we address these goals, and the data how we determine how our progress is going comes through things like MCAS. So Maureen will give us the scoop
Good
on.
evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dave, do I just mirror right over Bob?
Yeah, I have to get off.
So, I was a little jealous of Stephanie because she had all these fun things to talk about. I have to say. It was really nice to hear all of that, too. That was kind of heartwarming to know that we're back
Is there a butt coming?
talking about those things.
No.
No, just.
Actually, it was there's a lot of good stuff going.
Yes,
There were no applesauce questions on MCAS last year.
I don't believe so. I could check the released items to see, but this is a little more dry, I suppose. when We're looking at data, but happy to be here to just present an overview of the district results tonight. The principals will present in more detail about their schools when they come to do their improvement plans. I think that it's important just to remember the changes from the 2021 administration as we move forward to make any comparisons when we look back. Desi said last year that the 2021 aggregated results could be reasonably compared to previous years. So we can do that again if we look at the big picture here, but not so much with individual student results. I think it's also worth noting the various ways that the 2022 MCAS results might have had some impact from residuals of COVID and coming back with masks and attendance issues and mental health challenges and things like that, keeping that in mind as we talk about the results. The overall impressions, I'll start with the big picture. Millis performance was above the state average in all areas and all grades, varying from 1 to 34% above the state average in 2022. We had some strong performance in grade 5, science and math, and grade 8 ELA and math, and grade 10 ELA. So there were some pockets of results that showed some pretty strong growth. The student growth percentiles ranged from 43% to 71%, which is within or above the typical range of 40 to 60. And our overall average scale scores, when we look at the big picture and the average of all of the scores, they are slightly lower than if we go back to 2019, pre-COVID time, showing that there's still some gaps, some things that we need to take a look at, given everything that's happened. These are DESI's graphs that show Millis performance as compared to the state. Again, so grade 10 ELA, if we look at meeting and exceeding, we were 18 points above the state for ELA. For grade 10 math, again looking at meeting and exceeding, we were 10 points above the state average.
Wait,
Tell me if I'm going too fast.
where are you getting, I can't
So I'm
see the
looking at
number.
the green and the blue combined
Okay.
for Millis, and the green and the blue combined for the state, meeting and
Okay,
exceeding
I got you.
the expectations. Tried to make it as big as I could there.
No, I see that.
For science, biology, we were 2 points above the state, 2%. For grade 3 through 8 combined ELA, Millis was 12 points above the state average. For grades 3 through 8 math, we were 11 points above the state average. Again, for meeting and exceeding combined. And then grades 5 through 8 science and technology, we were 19 points above the state average. So here's a breakdown by categories and the percentage in each category. So if you take a look at the green columns, Millis meeting or exceeding, and the state averages for meeting and exceeding. And then we also look at the red shading and the percent of Millis students who are not meeting. And those we want to be below the state average, and they were.
So, if I recall from past presentations, that you were able to go into and dig into these results to actual individual students. The 8, how many students are part of that 8%?
So that would be 8% of the total enrollment, grade 3 through 8, which off the top of my head,
100 a class, maybe, is that too
yeah,
high?
maybe. Some are 80, 90.
3, 4, 5,
550,
6, 7,
600.
8. So if we did 100, it'd be 600, so let's go a little bit less. Say 500 or
Say
550?
500,
550 divided by, it'd be 8% of that.
8% of that.
This is not the test we can use
Mark should be able
calculators.
to tell you that right off his head.
He's already done it. What's the
Letting him
number?
play with his phone.
You're just waiting to see if he gets it.
44. 44, does that seem right? 08 times.
No,
No,
that's-
that's way
That
too
seems
high.
Mark, help me,
No.
please. I'm
No,
floundering. I'm asking.
Well,
Because
if
50
it's
would be
500,
10%.
10% would be 50.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So 8%.
yeah.
08 times, so
Okay.
that is 44, just based on this crude numbers. It could be higher or lower.
Right, I can give you the exact, I can look it up and get back to you on that.
It's not-
I did not.
There's a second part of that.
When is-
Are you, well, I guess it's a two-parter. And if you don't have the answers now, it's fine.
Yeah.
were there any surprises on that list, or were these students that you were already working with, are these students receiving extra help? And are you looking at their individual learning plans? So I guess that's a very wide open question, you know, but I'm
Right.
saying, were there, as a rule, were there any surprises coming out of that, or were these kids you were already
No,
working with?
no surprises. So, you know, maintaining confidentiality and all of that, we keep longitudinal data and historical data on MCAS performance, on our STAR assessments and all of that. And we can pretty much predict, based on the STAR scores in the spring and in the winter, which students might have trouble on the MCAS, and it's pretty predictive. So we are doing things, some of them, yes, might have learning disabilities, be receiving extra services,
Okay.
you know.
So, because that was gonna be the next step, is what's the action steps that come out of that?
Right.
Is that for all kids that are in the partially and not meeting? So if you have kids in the orange or red, do they get assessed and plans and?
So we have a tiered system of support in the district in all 3 schools. Looks a little different in each school based on schedules and things like that. So I'll use Clyde Brown as an example. They have data team meetings 3 times a year, or maybe more. They've gone to 2 report cards. So anyway, they have regular data team meetings, and they sit down and they look at MCAS data and STAR data and AIMSweb data, which is screening data, at the very beginning of the year in September. And they come up with a list of students that need additional support and instruction. And then they plan small group and individual instruction in math and in reading. And those kids get services based on their level of need. So some might be a little bit more during the course of a week, some might be a little bit less. And they set goals for those groups, and they monitor their progress as they're working in those groups, and then they go back and revisit that data again to see if they can exit the group, if there's another goal for another group. It's a fluid process that happens constantly. Discussions happen all year long. And the middle school is doing something similar with their win blocks. So they're looking at data and identifying students that would get some additional support in their win blocks, and so they're strategically grouping kids in a flexible way.
Okay.
So, and trying
So
to...
there's more than one, so it's not just off of the MCAS scores, it could be other factors too that.
Nope, so we try to use multiple data points. So usually it would be MCAS, it would be the screening data, it would be any classroom assessments, and then it might be teacher recommendation and observation of how a student's doing in the class at that particular time too.
Got it.
So not just based on one data point. Because we
Thank
do
you.
try to remember that it's one moment in time.
Right. Right.
Right, and that's,
And there
you
are a lot of
know,
other
in
things
my
happening.
experience as a principal, you know, you say surprises, every now and then you see some results,
Sure.
and the kid, you're like, ooh. And like Maureen says, it's one moment in time, and some things can affect how you do on the test.
But if you're looking at
But-
multiple data points.
Right.
And that's the only one that, it could just been a bad day,
Mhm.
or a bad couple days.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
sure. So we've got a little bit of a larger breakdown here by grade level. And if you recall, we used to do the analysis by school of what percentage above the state we were. So looking at all the grades, all areas, we've got 15 out of 20 that are 6% or more above the state on this graph. 17 out of 20 are 15% or more above the state average. And I think I mentioned before, grade 5, math and science, grade 8, ELA and math are 20% or higher above the state average. You can see those.
Do you, and I'm jumping ahead, so, but I want to, in case it's here, I can pull this back. Is there any comparison to the dark districts?
Yep. Great slide for you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just on the, I'm just noticing grade 6 where both, so compared to all of the other grades, grade 6 has both where they seem to be the closest to the state average. Are we looking at the grade 6 as a whole just to see, just because of this? Only because all of the other ones are so extraordinarily high that, and that one is, again, high, over, but in both of them,
Right.
it jumped out a little bit.
So one of the things that we've talked about around grade 6 was the years that they were doing remote learning were kind of formative times for learning to, solidify your reading skills and your math skills and be ready to move into middle school. As a whole, the grade 6 class has a higher percentage of students on IEPs with some learning needs, whether that factors in or not.
And I just happen to know from personal experience, it's a really small class too, so maybe that's weighing into it as well. Like percentages are, just because of the size of it is so small.
And for that class too, it's you like to look back and see.
Sure.
But when you look back, like the 21 was when they took half the test, and then 20 they didn't take the test.
Yep.
And then 19 they were in 3rd grade.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
4th grade, they were mostly at home.
Right.
Hybrid.
Right.
So, and they made the transition from Clyde Brown to middle school last year too, so.
Yeah, perfect storm.
So, given that, and again, the size of our town and our district, every one of these grades is, by and large, every kid is a percentage point. It's just a fact.
Right.
But given all the things that again, just with this, do we, and for the years that this specific grade had COVID and the implications, do we need to be looking at going kind of above and beyond and focused with services, or at least offering, additional help, stuff, after school, extended, I don't know. Just knowing everything that's going on, and if we do have a grade who, because of a variety of reasons, may have been more heavily impacted by time away from school during those times, you can't get the time back. But are there things that we as a district should be doing to, and not just for this grade, but for subsets within grades where, we can't give them the 2 years back, but we also don't necessarily shouldn't be looking to say, well, hopefully in the next 6, in addition to progressing the way you should, do the catch-up work too. Like, what do we need to do to help facilitate making, and all I can think is more time available for instruction or access to things that families can take advantage of to help for students who need really to kind of double up on, or double may not be but really need to play catch up, and that really needs time, and it's not something we can do from 8 to 2:15. So I guess my ask would be that maybe over the next couple of months, you guys take a look at this data, other things you're seeing, and come to us and let us know what, if anything, we should be looking to do to enhance our ability for these kids to, and again, not just one grade, but to enhance their ability to catch up.
One thing I think that has been helpful during the school day is the wind block. To be able to work with small groups of kids on goals and things like this.
And Terry could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we were able to increase both the math and reading interventionist to full-time this year to help support that. Grade 6, we extended everyday math up into grade 6 this year, which is what they've been using at Clyde Brown. So grade 6 has a more fluid following from Clyde Brown in math. And Christine Botello feels like that's been a really good move. We're doing some training for the reading interventionist in terms of really being able to do additional assessment with students in grade 6 particularly to find out what kind of early literacy skills they may have missed, whether they need, direct instruction in learning how to decode or how to read fluently, things like that. So I think we're looking at things in grade 6 almost from an elementary lens, a little more than we have in the past, given what they missed.
So I
that's
think-
during the school day. The Department of Ed is supporting acceleration academies during February and April break, I believe, for math only. That just came out. There's a grant for that, so that's on my list to talk to the principals about this week to see.
So to Mark's
about that.
point, to Mr. Conroy's point, this can help feed into maybe your strategic planning, your action steps, and also our budget process, which actually begins, well, it started last week.
No.
So we've started it early, so because you've been before us as a building administrator and principal, and you've been to a lot of meetings, we ask what you need to address your issues. We may not be able to give you what you need, but don't self-edit. Put it down, and then we can try to figure out, and that's the piece of what's the longer range plan. To Mark's point that, and I understand your point of keeping it to 3 years, but over the course of the next 4 years, we would like to increase our reading specialists. We want to get another 1.5, right? And so think about not just the scores, but in general, what do we need to make up for what just occurred for almost 2 years? So, because the news, when these results came out, the news was there. There was a lot of discussion about kids behind. Some have done fine, but the ones that are behind and what can be done. So that will be helpful. We interrupted you.
Okay,
It's okay.
so I'm glad we extended stuff through 6th grade, but the 6th.
Well, not only 6.
No. Oh, okay, the thing, because I guess that, just my thing is the 6th graders
Or now 7th grade.
are
they're
now
7th
7th
grade,
graders.
yeah.
So
Right.
bringing
Right, they're now
everything to 6th grade.
Into 7.
Right.
Right.
So everyday math is only 6th grade, it's not 7th
True,
grade,
you were
but-
asking about 6, that's why I
but-
had that in my head.
Yeah.
But
So, like,
yes.
what
But
are we
like
doing?
the
The
interventionists work with all grades in the middle school.
All grades. And what the teachers do with the results here is really dig into the item analysis and look at the kinds of questions that our students answered incorrectly, and then try and figure out why and what are the skills that they're missing and what are the things that they need to focus on this year, and then they adjust that. So there's that happening too. I think we would like to see all kids improve their scores in grades 3 through 7. I think in the middle school, looking at how our 8th graders did in being able to head up into high school after last year, we feel like they did a good job. They worked hard, the kids worked hard, the teachers worked hard, and the results in 8th grade at least were pretty good. Just an overview of the student growth percentiles. Last year, the state lowered those SGP numbers. They used a different formula based on, a shorter test and half of a test. They went back to using 50 as the student growth percentile. And again, our averages fell right between that, in that typical range of 40 to 60, which should indicate that students are making 1 year's growth based on their scores. Of course, we know they need to make up a little more than 1 year's growth, so let's continue to work on that. Just looking at historical scores. Again, grade 3 to 8, the big picture of ELA. If we look back to 2019, which was the last time they took the full test, that group, the scores have dropped. Same with 3 to 8 math. If we look at our high school students, our 10th graders, in ELA, it looks like they've made a recovery back to where the scores were in 10th grade in 2019. And then the math scores have declined. So we definitely, it depends on how you look at the data, what you're going to see, right? We definitely still have work to do, and we need to support students in making up some of that lost time.
And I would say, you know, as part of this, last year, the average kid in Millis schools missed 14.8 days of school because of isolation, quarantine, what have you. I'm sorry, that's the state average was 14.8. Millis was 10.9. The average kid missed 10.9 days. And the state average was 14.8. We had 43% of the kids missing 10 or more days. State average was 55.9% missing more than 10 days. And then the state categorizes, and I don't know if you have a slide on this, Maureen, I don't think so. On attendance?
Attendance, no.
Yeah, so you know, this kind of gives some context. We had chronically absent is 10% or more, so if we have a 180-day school year, it's absent 18 times. So in Millis, we had 15% of our kids missed 18 days, and in the state, it was 19%. So that, you know, has a lot to do with, you know, disrupted learning, or, you know.
Are those the families working with the social worker?
A number of, a number of them are,
Well,
and
it
some
could
of them
be
are no,
COVID, right?
You
just,
you
you
could have
know,
been
right.
quarantined, you get
versus
COVID, you're
yeah.
out for 5
what were those
days.
percentages? I'd be curious, and I'm sure you don't have, but I'd be curious to know what it was in 2019 and 2018.
Right.
I mean,
Like
still
how-
now, if the kids get COVID, they have to be out for
Right, so
5
it's,
days. So it's-
absolutely, and to that point, you know, when we compare 2019 to 2022, the 2019 students were in school a lot more than the 2022 kids.
I think our teacher absences due to COVID too had an impact.
Sure.
Because there was
Right.
disruption in
Yeah.
teaching and learning, because the teachers were out for 5
Mhm.
or more days.
At the very beginning,
Right,
wasn't it
we
like
had-
10 days
We
or
had
something?
lots of
Yeah.
subs.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of factors in there.
Mhm.
And it's, you know, and I'm sure you've seen the news across the state. You know, we're kind of mirroring what the state data is showing.
But, and I don't think anyone's questioning this, but we still have an obligation.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
understand the
100%.
causes.
Yeah.
Talking about the causes is not gonna change it, other than we have to, our work is cut out for us, right? And we have more work to
Yep.
do. And that's why you have to identify resources and what we, as the committee, can help, to try to help facilitate, to start to fix some of these gaps, address some of them.
Because I mean, the 10th grade, we probably either talked about it briefly or were sitting in the middle of COVID when the 2019 scores came out. But that dropped from 17, 18 down to 19, and now we're, you know,
So just keep
22,
in mind
yeah.
that the 2017 and 2018 scores, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong,
in
but
the-
they were a different test.
Right, yeah,
They
in the
switched
10th
to the
grade, they
next
were
gen
the-
test in 2019,
The-
so it's
right.
hard to look at those
Okay.
They, that would have been proficient in advance.
proficient or higher,
Just for
Okay.
for the high school ones.
yeah.
And honestly, the 2021 scores, I can't explain. I can't. Right.
So, let's see, where am I here? So I took a look at the historical performance of our current ninth graders. I was more curious about their trajectory from third grade on. This is ELA from the time they were in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and they took the test last year in eighth grade. So their achievement scores, which is the green line, shows a positive trend over time. Their student growth percentile has dropped a little bit over time when I ran a trend line. So, not sure exactly what that says, but I felt it was a glimmer of hope that our current ninth graders are on a good path going forward towards graduation. That although they had a disruption in sixth and seventh grade, they seem to have recovered a bit. Or they're on a good trend. For math, for that particular group of students, both their achievement and their student growth percentiles had a slightly positive trend. I think is what we want students to be doing over time. We want to see that trend be positive, and we want their performance to continue to grow by the time they graduate. So. Then I just, again, looked at the Department of Education data about composite scaled scores. So if we take all of the scaled scores and average them together for our students, overall, they've dropped anywhere from 0.5 to, I think it's 6.5%, or not percent in their scaled score. So we know that there's still work to do. Like you said, just another example. I did pull out the DART school comparison. I don't know if there are particular schools that you focus on when you look at these, but when I averaged the DART school percentiles, Millis was above the average in grades 3 through 8 ELA and math, grade 10 ELA, grades 5 and 8 science. And our student growth percentiles were above average except for in grade 10 math. We fell down a little bit.
That's helpful. Because that's really the, and I put it in quotes, the more fair comparison, right? Because
Mhm.
the state, I understand why people compare to the state, but it's really the DART that helps
Mhm.
give a little more context. 'Cause
Based on the demographics.
based on the
and
demographics,
size of the
the
schools
state
and the-
tries to tell us
Yep.
what is a similar district. So we don't always agree, but it is better than just the state average.
Mhm. Anything stand out to you there?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's good, no, that's helpful. No, I mean, we're right where we should be, except for a couple like the ones you highlighted on the grade 10. We're down on one on the math, that's it. we're above on everything except, if I'm not mistaken, grade 10 math. For the growth.
For growth, yep.
No, that's helpful, thank you.
And so you've asked the question all along, but that's really what we ask ourselves, is how are we going to use these results? What are we going to do with them? Because the data doesn't do us any good if we don't use it and make some decisions based on it. The Department of Education releases the ELA essays responses. So those have been downloaded and given to the teachers so they can actually read what the students wrote on all of the open response questions, and that helps to inform their instruction, helps us to look at individual students and what do they need. I think I mentioned they review the item analysis and the standards for strengths and weaknesses that help, I think, inform not only the extra support in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 and additional intervention, but also Tier 1 instruction in the classroom. What do they need to be focusing on with every student? So then we identify scaffolds needed and use other data points to determine Tier 2 intervention. And we look at it through an equity lens. Also, are all students, do they have access to grade level instruction? Because if they don't have access to grade level instruction, then if you give them a grade level test, we can pretty much predict how they'll do. So there's been a bit of a shift, especially with the new reading program at Clyde Brown, with a focus on ensuring that during that reading block of time, all students have access to the same curriculum materials, the same text. They may need more scaffolds, they may need other supports, they may need it chunked into smaller bits, but they're still using the same text. So that's one of the things that's happening now. And then looking ahead, we'll be looking to see what the impact of the new curriculum and the new programs that they have at Clyde Brown. Also, grade 9 and 10, the new math program, Algebra 1 and geometry programs that they're using this year. Grade 6, Bob mentioned it, that the middle and the high school are going to focus on aligning writing strategies and writing skills across grades. And there has been some discussion about beginning to plan for a curriculum review in math. We've had everyday math for, I think, 12 or 13 years now. So given the Department of Ed's ratings with high quality materials and all that, it could be time, budget-wise, permits to start looking at the math maybe end of this year, next year, at least to get a sense of where we are and what our needs might be.
Can I ask you to clarify something on the equity? Can you define, when you're talking about equity, just in the reading example? Because I think some people hear equity and think separate things, because what I heard was access to the same, all students in this district have access to the same exact materials and curriculum material. Mm-hmm. They may not be at the same level of reading or math, but I just want to make sure when we're talking about equity, we're not giving the impression that certain groups of kids don't have access to materials. That's not what we're saying.
No, and I should clarify that, I suppose.
Because that's how, I'm not saying that's how you said
so
it, but
we're looking at equity in a number of different ways. We're looking at groups of students. We're looking at students, say, on IEPs who may be given easier material because they're not quite performing on grade level yet. So we're talking about how do we help students, all students, access challenging material and give them the skills and scaffolds to do that.
So I think
that's one way.
You should really define what you mean when you're in a section saying equity.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to the appropriate reading level, right? Getting to where they need to be in that grade is one thing. It's just the material is there.
Right.
It's not. They just their ability may
Right.
be. It's not equal with others.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? This is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, next on the agenda is the chair report on the MSBA project update. So I will start and let Denise. So since we last met, in this meeting, we did a presentation for the committee on the MSBA, which is the middle school, high school, Mass School Building Authority project, which is, we applied for, and are in the process of getting a feasibility study. We have a town vote to look at a renovation addition of the middle school, high school. As a reminder for the viewing public, we have in numbers fluctuating a little bit based on the reports, but up to close to $12 million in mechanical and HVAC and electrical repairs before there's anything else to do to impact learning in this building. And those bills are coming due regardless of whether we access state funding or not. And so Denise did her presentation, Ms. Gibbons did her presentation here. We then went to FinCom the next night. And then we went to the Board of Selectmen the following Monday, last Monday. And then we revisited FinCom last Wednesday. The presentation, Ms. Gibbons has done an excellent job. Her materials, the frequently asked questions, a couple people actually commented in different committees that the frequently asked questions anticipated questions that they had, and we proactively addressed them. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable that this committee has provided enough information to the public and to the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen about this project and what we're doing. In the next major milestone will be town meeting vote, which will be its own separate article, and it will be for $1.3 million. Ms. Gibbons, what did I miss?
Maybe the only thing I would add is we were fortunate in that the FinCom was unanimous in their vote to recommend approval of the warrant article.
And I would say positive, very
Yes.
positive.
Yes.
Several members, not all, but several members actually went out of their way to say that they're supportive of the project. It's the right thing, and quite honestly, and very helpfully, echoed what we're talking about, that these bills are coming due. And why would we not access this money? This money is money we've paid. 1 cent of every dollar collected on sales tax goes into this fund. I think that's it on the MSBA. Any questions from the committee? Ms. Roach, any questions?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Check it. All right, so let's move on to, well, can we transition into the deficit and the operating thing next?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Mr. Wigan, would you like to?
Sure.
And as you're setting up, this was a request that I had made, well, the committee had made, but I guess I was the author of the bill, to request a breakdown of every employee in the district. When you were putting this list together, did you find anything or discover anything of note that we should be aware of, or did this basically coincide with what you already knew?
No, I think it coincided with what we knew. I think I would still call it preliminary, but I think we're 99% there. And I think it's what I told the administrative team, and I think it's absolutely true. It was an immense help for us as we begin the process for FY24. And there's some things along the way, quite frankly, that I learned. So, for example, now that we have the list, one of the things I can do manually right now, and trust me, this is not going to be a big deal, just have to do it once, is I can now incorporate into the salary spreadsheet, I can give each one of those positions a number. You know, it's a one-time deal, okay, won't have to keep repeating it. And that will be a help.
Like an employee number?
Like an employee number, exactly. In fact, I may use the employee number that each of those employees have.
Because Bob asked for number 1.
Bob, well, you know Bob.
Very egotistical.
Yeah, you
I
know
said, "I'm
how
the
Bob
number
is. You know how Bob is about these things, so. So no, I would say it was really a good exercise. I think it was a good exercise for the administrative team. They were all very helpful in putting this together. And I think we all feel comfortable that we know who we've got and where they're supposed to be.
Another question, and so the one thing I would ask is that we at some point ensure that all of the individual contracts
Yes, that
are
still has to be
added to the
done.
drive.
Correct.
And let's ensure that, based on some of the conversations we had about paras over the summer, that we have accurate contracts and that we actually in fact have contracts for everyone.
Yep,
With some of these individual, the non-admin team individuals,
right,
we may find some issues, so let's.
correct.
I think that's the next stage, the next step. The
Mm.
people in the units, in the bargaining units, those are clear, we know who they are, it's those individuals. But I think that will help us.
And this, in this process, has helped us find a couple of those as well.
Good.
And we continue to go through those, and I think that, again, through the FY '24 budget process, as we do that exercise, and we get those kinds of things, I think we'll get that straightened out as well.
Good, thank you for doing it. I know that was work, but I'm glad to hear that it was helpful.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Good, excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about, and I want to be clear that, well, let's calibrate what we're talking about when we talk about a deficit. So last year, and Mr. Conroy and Mr. Wigan, correct me if I'm wrong. Last year, when we started the budget process, and I'm going to use approximate numbers, and if you have more definitive numbers, feel free to interject. When we start our budget process in January and February, the vast majority of our budget is towards personnel and benefits and related. I think at some point you said it's 85 or 88 or even maybe 90.
Yeah, it's around 85%.
Okay, 85%. And then the other driver in our budget, and it's really an unfunded mandate, is our sped costs, specifically around out-of-district tuition. So when we entered the budget cycle last year in early January of '22, or this year, I'm sorry, in January of '22, we were, based on our increase in personnel costs and our out-of-district tuitions and other related sped costs, we were looking at a deficit of around $500,000.
$516,045 or something like that.
Okay, so $516,000.
Right,
And we can't run a deficit.
correct.
We have to make cuts and
Correct.
make some hard decisions around getting that down to zero. We were fortunate in that we identified this deficit early enough that we approached FinCom, and FinCom, and I want to be clear on the language, gave us not a one-time, but gave us an increase in our operating budget of $360,000. Not saying that you'll never get it again, but we need to go back and look at it next year.
Correct.
It had strings attached,
Correct.
legitimately, and that's the way it should be. They shouldn't just give us money in perpetuity. But now and so what we did go through is we went through a process of identifying the 516 minus the 360, so 150,000, let's just use 150. The 150,000, how did we get down to zero? And and we did this in this committee, and so now as we start the budget process again, it's important that we understand where we were last year, where we're potentially going to be next year, because the other piece is FinCom at last week's meeting asked us what we think the delta is going to be and what additional operating budget money would we need or propose to them. So just to be clear, it started in another committee. We're now here going back to look at the FY '23 budget that will help us with the FY '24. and what our ask of the committee. Is everyone?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to give a little background.
Nope. And actually, as you were saying that, I may start using different terminology. I may, because we are not in deficit. That's what I want to make clear from the start.
Okay, good.
We have a balanced budget right now today.
We have to. It's by law.
By
we
law.
have a ballot. Yes.
And I'll explain how it's balanced. And I may start using the term shortfall.
I like that.
When I talk about it, it's a projection. It is not right now, here and now, it's a projection, okay? So to talk about it as a projected shortfall, maybe or projected over expenditure, there's a number of different ways you can talk about it. But those are better terms than deficit, I think.
We've used shortfall in the past. I think
Yeah.
shortfall is not a-
Shortfall may be a better term to use here, so I may stop using the D word. So to kind of get to some of the detail here. So we'll start with the fact that we had hoped that we were going to be able to achieve some prepayment of some tuition, but we knew that that might not happen. And that was okay, because we could fund that with additional money from circuit breaker, and that's what we have done. We made the decision, because we needed to do so for our students, to hire an additional BCBA. That was after the budget was closed. We offset that by putting 2 additional paras in the 240 grant with funds that were rolled over from last year. If my computer screen doesn't keep blanking out on me. We had an additional paraprofessional that we were able to put from the TIES program, actually a job coach, I should say, that we were able to put into a revolving fund associated with the TIES program, because we have a student tuitioning into that program. And that actually still leaves us with additional funds in that revolving fund if there are other needs that we have in that program. We also needed an additional preschool teacher that is associated with the paraprofessional we needed to hire. And that is offset by putting there's additional paraprofessionals that we're moving into a revolving account. And then balancing all this out we had enhanced 911, which we needed to do. We have had software over expenditures, rather significant ones, to the tune of $52,000. I went through the staffing lists, in other words, that staffing spreadsheet we have, and I went through every single hire. And I compared the replacement cost versus what we had budgeted. That ended up being around $64,246. Still estimating about $20,000 in facilities costs that we may have to be overexpended. 10,000 of that will be related to a skid steer, which we lease every year, but the cost of a skid steer has gone up dramatically. And then we had one of our vans, we just got hit with a big repair, and we just needed to take that on. So basically, after I listed some of those other things, there's $171,775 that balances everything out from a variety of federal and state grants and revolving funds that pays off the rest of that. Now, part of that is additional circuit breaker funds, which we planned on using all along. And what we do is that pays more tuition, frees up money in the operating budget. The money in the operating budget then is used, obviously, to offset some of these other costs. We also identified another grant that we found out could only be used to pay for staffing costs. So we're, in fact, using it for staffing costs. That money has also been freed up, and that's helping to offset some of these costs as well. And then when all gets said, there's about $14,000 now that we still anticipate through the budget freeze we'll be able to achieve to balance the current budget. I do not believe we're going to have any problems whatsoever. I've never yet in 28 years not delivered a
But
balanced
just going
budget.
back to what you said, we started with the balanced budget.
We started with a balanced budget, we're going to end with a balanced budget.
How, what's the 14,000?
The $14,000?
Yeah.
The $14,000 is if I do all of this math, I have $14,000 that I can't right now tell you it's coming from here. But I have a budget freeze in effect. So for example, all right, I'll give you an example. I have a paraprofessional who hasn't been hired yet. All right. That's probably part of that $14,000. Okay? I have things that I have not allowed to be purchased during the budget freeze. That's probably part of that $14,000. There are other things like that that will happen during the course of a year.
But if we were 0 on 7/1, how did it become 14,000? I was with
Be-
you until that point.
Because we had other things that came in after the budget, like enhanced 911, okay? Like
So-
the additional staff.
So
We-
this memo, I thought this memo was just to how did we get to 0 on July 1st of 2022?
On July 1, 2022, we were at 0. It's the fiscal year 23 budget we're talking about. This is all fiscal year 23.
Okay, so this was, the enhanced 911 was not part of our conversation last spring.
Correct.
What else was not part of our conversation?
All of the stuff on.
We talked about, well, so for example, we talked about the BCBA, but it was part of this year's budget. We talked about the additional preschool teacher and the additional paraprofessional, but they're part of this year's budget. So none of those hit until this year, and those discussions took place after
So did you?
the
do you have
FY
a-
'23
do you
budget
have
was
the memo-
closed.
Do you have a memo where, how we got to 0 last year?
How we got to 0 last year?
How do we
With the last year.
eliminate the
Last year's
shortfall?
budget?
Basically, what, this 171,000, everything on that list, from enhanced 911 down, are unexpected costs or costs that were more with the,
Anticipated.
more than anticipated, which is software. So basically, we've run into costs that are 171,000 above what we had planned so far this year. That 171 is being covered by the things listed in Terry's. The things above the additional preschool teacher, the paraprofessional, the BCBA, and at the top, the out of district, were all things that came up during the budget process that we found, or we closed a gap on.
I had identified a source for it.
That was my question.
All right,
That's my
okay.
question.
Basically,
We're
from
ta-
an-
yeah,
We got
we're
to
mixing
zero-
fiscal
We
years,
had to
that's
get
why.
to 0 when we were finalizing our budget for FY '20.
I had identified, Mark explained it far better than I did. I'd identified a source for everything until you get down
That's exactly
to
what I was
enhance
asking.
911.
That's what I was asking.
There we go.
All right.
All right, I apologize, I
No,
misunderstood
that's-
your question.
And
I tend to
now
look at
this,
things- I
the
tend to look at things in
171
fiscal
was above
years.
and beyond
Right,
after we had proposed our budget.
correct.
Okay, that's.
Correct.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the support, Mark.
I do what I can.
No,
not
that's,
easy.
there you go. I tend to think of things in groups and in fiscal years, and that's why I was having trouble getting there. So I apologize.
No, nothing to there's nothing to apologize for. So, anything else that you want to identify or highlight for us on this memo?
The only thing is, I just noted up at the top, just reminding people that 157, you talked about that delta between in that 516, the
Yeah.
delta between the 361 and we took care of that as part of our recast budget. And that's why that doesn't really matter here.
So, this plays into us going back to FinCom in a fairly relatively short period of time to let them know. And I will anticipate, and I've already stated this, and I said this on camera to Mr. Berube, and I had a conversation with him at a soccer game, that we're very concerned about locking into a number because we don't know what that number is. We can give you a guesstimate with the request and the reservation to say, we want to be able to come back and give you that. So I understand that that may be foreign to thinking about what our delta will be. But for instance, you stated that sped out-of-district tuitions by law or by the state, they're all going up 18%.
14.
Oh, 14.
Yeah, 14.
Okay, I'm sorry, 14. So right now, if we looked at our October 24th numbers, or use November 1st.
Right.
And nothing changed, which we know it will change, we can say, based on our numbers right now with no changing, we're going to have to spend an additional, whatever that number is.
Depending on the kid, like, 'cause if you have a kid aging out next year, then you don't have to worry about that tuition.
So,
If you have
but
a
that's
kid
what
coming
we need you to do.
Right.
And I know that there's a lot going on, but this is important. The committee that was very supportive of us in our school project is trying to be supportive of helping us meet what will be a shortfall.
No, we've been talking about this for the last week anyways. We were talking about it, the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials spent 2 days talking about special ed, including this very topic. The Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents and MASBO have actually proposed some action in regard to this.
I'll be sharing some correspondence on
Yeah,
that today.
and I will say that, that at least one member of DESE was not ashamed at all to say that he felt that the department was going to have to do something to offset this, but of course the department has not announced any plans to do that, so you're right. Right now, we have to assume that 14.1% is on us.
That's ridiculous. So, go ahead, Mr. Conroy, because I wanted to transit, because there's another memo in here.
So kind of basically in the short term, what I'm would envision is, we've started with 500, we had 500,000 this year. Unless we know, X kid is graduating out, or we've had movement. So population stays the same as it is today, it's 500,000 plus 14%.
14%, yeah.
So really the question in the short term is just, do we know there's a kid graduating out? Have we had any new kids move in? If the answer to both of those is no, I think our best estimate right now is 500 plus 14%. If the answer to either one of those is yes, then we...
Or if there are kids in preschool, are the kids already in the pipeline? I'm not trying to make it more complicated.
Right, but-
I don't
Right, yeah,
disagree,
but this is
I don't
what-
disagree with
Right,
what
Like,
you,
do we know
Absolutely.
Yeah,
kids that are
A
gonna...
year from now, like, given what we have, a year from now, what is it?
I think the way I choose to answer is that we can give you a more precise number.
But like for top of the napkin, 500,000 times 14.1%, put it together, and that's what we're looking at.
I think
For the top of the,
I think it's a little low.
So you think there's more kids, or you think the costs are gonna go up?
No, I think there is another variable in there, but I think the 500,000 might be a little low. I don't think it's far off, but I think it's a little low. But I think we can get pretty precise for you.
so when we present.
I think on our current, I think for a variety of reasons, I obviously don't want to have this discussion publicly. But I think we will be able to give you a good number.
And you don't want to have it publicly because it's talking about privileged information about students.
Yes.
And that's why we're not talking about it publicly.
Right.
Here's what I'll say, is that whatever number we give them, we're going to have to be able to back it up. And I know you know that. So
We
when
will be
you're-
able to back it up.
Perfect, that's all. So if we could, maybe you, myself, and the super, reconnect maybe early next week, I got us a little bit of a breathing room, but I also don't want to sit on this too much. We're going and running into town meeting,
Yep.
and then the budget cycle starts pretty,
No,
so you
problem.
understand where I'm coming from.
no problem.
Thank you for this, and I think the more accurate we can be, and I will state it 3 times at that meeting, is that we reserve the right that this number could change with a move-in, or people, people are going out of district. Many, many things could change it, so,
Yeah.
but we can do that, we can handle that.
And of course, the other knock on wood here is that eventually we hope to find out what our circuit breaker number will be.
And you're gonna work on a circuit breaker kind of overview for us.
Yes, you have, earlier this afternoon, I sent out a sort of an overview one. But once circuit breaker actually comes out, I can give more detail.
I don't think I have that, but that's
No,
maybe.
that's not in the packet.
No, it's not in the
Oh.
packet.
So basically, talking about equity, people on technology have more information than the people in the paper.
It wasn't intended for this meeting.
Wasn't intended for this meeting. I was not clear whether or not it was intended for this meeting,
Okay,
so
fair enough.
it was shared.
I'll look at it. I was running to a game.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Any other questions of Mr. Wigan about this? We're clear on where we're trying to get to and how
Yep.
we're gonna get there?
And we'll get there.
Excellent, excellent. All right, next on the agenda is we went over the staff liftings by school, we did the district improvement, the deficit, the shortfall in the operating budget, we just discussed, and now the possible extended day increase.
Yeah, and I would say basically what we've provided with you is some more information to maybe answer some of your questions. So there's a new spreadsheet that has a couple of different things on there. Probably the major issue or major thing it has is at the top, where it has from FY16 to the current projections. It has the beginning balance of extended day, the revenue, the expenditures.
Which one is that?
This
It
one.
looks,
Extended day one.
yep,
Got it,
he's
thank
got
you.
it.
File name.
Deficit enrollment
Yeah.
history. So it starts with beginning balance, revenue, expenditures, and ending balance. And what you can see is FY17 was actually sort of a high water mark for us. And then there started to be a decline in FY18, a decline in FY19, and then the pandemic starts in 20, of course. And then we were closed all of FY21, and FY22 is our exit from the pandemic, but for a variety of reasons, obviously, we did not have anything close to full attendance. And then we, right now, are projecting improvement this year, but still, while we are improving, it would still be a negative fund balance right now, all things being equal. I had been telling you, and there's some more detail that I could get into and would be happy to provide it to the committee. And some of this may be the way it was calculated by previous directors, which is something I need to kind of go back and see if I can dig out from some old files. But I've previously said that we're back to pre-pandemic levels. We're actually at pre-pandemic levels in certain specific programs, even a little bit above. But we're, as you can see, we're really not at pre-pandemic levels overall the way this has been previously presented to the committee. So I think it's important that I correct that for you. And then we're still working on the staffing listing for you. But we did have the FY20 listing at the start of the year, and we do obviously have the staffing for this year. So when we were, I'm not, I can get the staffing for FY '22. I'm not quite sure why I didn't end up with it for this meeting, so I apologize for that. So that's the new spreadsheet for you. There is another spreadsheet which you've seen before, but we added a section. And at the top of it, it had the budget, if you will. But then if you go to the middle, there's a green section. And the green section has the monthly projections for impact on a family. And the reason we did it monthly as opposed to weekly is because that's how people pay. So, and with preschool wrap, you'll notice there's a note. In those situations, we assume 6 hours a day for all of those programs. There's like, for each of those days, like 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, there are 6 programs within each of those days. So to do that would have been very hard to do. So that's why we just said, well, you know what, the worst case scenario is somebody is there for 6 hours. So we gave you that scenario in all of those different programs. So that will give you some idea of what the impact would be at those different percentage increase levels. And obviously now that we've done it once, if you wanted us to calculate something at a different rate, we could do that.
Oh, I see. So the green is just basically breaking it down to showing what?
Right.
Okay.
I thought green was a nice color and a way to distinguish it.
Questions from the committee? Because this is not up for a vote because it's not on the agenda
Right.
as an action item. So we're not voting tonight. But to Ms. Gibbons' point, when we had this conversation, if in fact we are going to move in the direction of increasing the fees in January, we need to give notice. And we are at the end of October. We're rapidly approaching, I think, to be fair to families, we'd probably have to make a decision at the next meeting, or at a minimum, get a letter out to families, and then do the vote at the second meeting in November. But we're up against it, and I think waiting and getting additional information and having Terry look a little more at that was the appropriate thing to do. I don't think we're at an incredible bad place, but we're getting close. I don't think we have much more time. We have to be fair to the families. Any questions? I guess the questions would be anything for Terry. And then if no one has anything for Terry, as a committee, do we want to put this as an action item on the next meeting, which is November 8th? Because the following meeting, we have Thanksgiving, and it will be the 29th. So we go to the end of the month. We're almost in December at that point. So I think we have to make a decision next meeting, in my opinion. And maybe we just put it on the agenda as an action item. We have a conversation. If we want to pull it back, we pull it back, but I don't think we have much more time.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Gibbons.
Excuse me. The only question I have for the committee is, are there any other increments of increase that we would want to entertain that we might want to ask Mr. Wigan to run? So the lowest increase number in the schedule right now is 10. Would we like to?
And Terry, what does that 10 get us?
I was wondering that too. Is that what's the red on the bottom?
No, the red and the bottom are wage increases. So what that 10 gets you
But the net though, right,
Is
is
at the
the
top.
net
'Cause it's at
the
projected
top.
gain loss, right?
Because basically,
The very bottom line of the
Yeah.
red though. would
Yeah,
be
but that,
what-
the
That's
red
what's
is,
proposed
there's
wage
a
increases.
there's an increase in salaries.
I understand that.
Right, so if,
But also an
so it
increase in
depends on what
fees.
you're, so, two different perspectives.
Oh,
So at the top, in the black section,
Okay.
you will see the revenue. So you'll see about a $20,000 increase in revenue. And again, if nothing else changes.
Under the totals in that
Right,
top section.
and then you'll see that with all the other expenses saying the same, that basically cuts your deficit to $45,000. If you were to increase wages as well, then what that does is it still will cut your deficit, but again, only down to about $51,000.
so I think, again, I think there's the short term and there's the longer term, but I'm struggling, and I think my ask on data is FY '22 enrollment and staffing, those
Okay.
numbers, and ideally, I would like to see FY '19 staffing, if we can get that. Just because I'm trying to get, we were plus or minus 16, 17, 18, 19. We made a choice in 20, which I would do 7 days a week, to continue the salaries for people so that we weren't laying people off. That decision and the closing and the revenue was a $85,000 cost that took this balance from 104 to 19. We then ran fiscal 21. Basically, it didn't exist. We had some expenses. We had some revenue. Basically a break even, $4,000. When we came back in fiscal 22, the revenue and staffing just didn't work. Like, they just didn't, and they're not working now. So, again, well, we have to make a decision to get us to understand what this 65,000, how we're going to close the 65,000. But I still have a longer term question of how this is a viable, how we make this a viable scenario without having a better understanding. I mean, it looks like we need enrollment to be somewhere in the 140 to 150 range. So how do we get there?
Okay.
Do we have the capacity to take those 20 people off the waiting list and bring them in?
At our
Meaning, with the current staffing, or do we need additional
We need
staff?
additional staffing.
Yeah, not at our current
They're not out
ratios.
there.
So that's not even going to help us. Because we'd have to hire more staff to make the revenue, and it's,
Do we know
Part
how
of-
many more staff we'd have to hire if we brought 20 kids in?
So according to the thing, it
Yeah.
says it has to be 1-to-10 ratio. So it'd be
Well,
10%.
but if I look back over, I mean, again, you can look back to 20, for example, and you were really not there, particularly at after school. But what it is in 20, remembering the statistics in my head, it was more consistent, if you will. What we're having happening now is, for example, our ratio on a couple of particular days is very high. So that average is really misleading. And that's part of the problem, is it's not just a matter of hiring, it's a matter of hiring so that we could get coverage on particular days. And that's really the issue.
it's hard to get people
Yeah,
for
it's hard to
specific
get
days,
people on a particular days that we need them.
opposed to Monday through Friday.
Right. So I think that, is it a lot of staff that we need? I don't know that it really is. Is it staff on particular days? Absolutely.
for those 20 to come in off the list.
Right.
I mean, you have plenty of other things, but just see what it would be. I just don't think that 20 is going to give enough of revenue, but it is still bringing in more money.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, certainly for the most part, what we've seen in the last couple of years is there is an almost linear relationship between the benefits and the deficit. Now, in the past, that's sort of what was eating into the fund balance, however. So either way, sooner or later, we would have been faced with this problem. It just happens that we, were fortunate enough to have a pandemic that
But we were
made it face it.
We were, here's the thing, we were losing, 16 to 17, we lost
Right.
21 kids. We were then losing, now, that year, we only lost 9,000 in 16. 17, we lost 40,000. Then we lose another 20. We were basically on a downward trend
Right.
of 4 or 5 kids, which was losing us an additional 20,000 we were losing 20,000 every year with 4 or 5.
Now,
We then plummeted because of COVID. Really, break even is probably around 150 kids.
yeah, I'd say between 100 and 155, yeah.
Yeah. So this program is not going to break even until we have a 50% increase in enrollment. And that's would then require additional staff at higher rates than what they were making in fiscal 17. So again, we've got a $65,000 problem. We also have a much larger long-term conversation that needs to be had as to how you do this with 100 kids compared to 160. Because I just don't see how you make that. I just don't see how you make that up.
I'm wondering like what year Kathy left and Jean took over and what has changed since whatever the decrease or decline of enrollment and decline of, in terms of like programming, like why aren't people signing up for this?
But if you
Well,
look
the
at
class
Function
sizes.
of, right, and just the number of available kids.
And it's also, life is different now than it was. If
Yeah,
I,
people are home.
right,
People are home.
you got work from
Remote
home.
remote
You
work,
don't
yeah.
need to have your kid. You don't need to drop your kid off 2 hours early. You don't need them to stay an extra 2 hours after school.
Yeah.
I just feel bad thinking about having this program go. It helped us. It helped just the idea of,
So
I know, I get it.
And
But the alternative
I
is
do think I do think it's reasonable for us to take a look at the fees. It's been a really long time, and I think it's equally as important to look at the structure of the program as it is to look at the fees.
I don't disagree with you on that. But now here's what I'm thinking is is this program viable in FY24? And now we're going to try to we can't put on the backs of 100 parents, 104 parents,
No.
try to make up the 65,000. That's just not appropriate.
No, I think one of the points I made in the cover memo to all of this, is I said that one of 4 things that would have to address, well, 2 or 4 things that we have to address. One's viability, as Marcus mentioned, but a second is if we decide that it is viable and we want to continue it, is how do we move forward with probably consistent fee increases, but fee increases that are reasonably,
I agree with that.
acceptable for parents to handle.
I mean, we haven't increased fees, so you could have someone who's had their kids in there for 4 years or 5 years and never seen a fee increase.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean we should do it 50%, but
Exactly. But to Terry's point, a schedule, as much as we're projecting out the viability, we should project out the fees.
so the question is, no, I guess it's all relative. I was gonna say, do we prorate the fee increase? It's not, they're just paying for it as they go. So a 10% or a 14% is a 10% or a 4, okay.
Right, right. So being mindful to where we are in the economy and the strain on this group of 100 and whatnot, do we want to entertain a lower than 10% fee increase at all? I'm just asking the question, just because for the next discussion, if we're looking to make some sort of decision,
To vote.
if Terry could, if we have that ask, if we could give that request to Terry now, just so he could include that column in the spreadsheet. Right now, the lowest increase number that we have is 10. So it's either 0 or the first level is 10. I'm not advocating one way or another, I'm just asking the question.
I was wondering, like, what can we sustain every year in this deficit or in this shortfall? From this particular line of revenue? Like, are
We're
we
done.
able to carry $50,000 in shortfall this year and next year? Until
We can on this one. This one is this paying for it.
Right.
This is a self-sustained program, so.
Right. So as I look at the expenditures, so
It's almost
I-
all staff.
is it on one of the spreadsheets?
No, I remember
Okay.
when we did it
Okay.
with Jen and I did this, and
Okay.
Terry would have a better idea. What percentage of the expenditures is staff?
What percentage of staff?
Yeah.
I think it's even higher than the regular budget, as I
90
recall.
plus?
Yeah, because
Yes,
there's not all
90.
the curriculum materials.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
like
curriculum
that.
materials or anything like that.
Certainly
It's,
materials.
it's probably 91, 92%.
So, and I totally understand increase. Did something dramatic happen to expenditures? So we haven't increased the staff pay schedules dramatically. I'm just looking at 20 on the expenditure line, and I'm comparing it to 23 projected.
You didn't have a full year in 20.
Yeah, that's why I noted pandemic start.
Oh, so 20 is not a full?
Yeah, 'cause
20's
March,
not,
we
20's
went
not
out
a
March
full
8th.
year, 21's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Or March 10th,
One-
whatever
one-
that is.
One thing I think that, part of the reason, well, the primary reason we never raised fees is because we were carrying $100,000+
remember.
Right,
balance.
right.
Had the pandemic not hit, and had we not made the decision that we made,
The right decision.
yes, we would be projecting to still have a balance of $20,000 in fiscal '23, at the end of fiscal '23.
And then we could do a reasonable
Right.
increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Then we
We'd
could do a
have to do
5%.
something.
No, well, the
We
question.
still need to look at it though,
we
because
would be
we've been
having the
eating
fees of-
so much
Correct.
into it.
We would have started eating.
Yeah, like, yeah.
We've now gone, we went from eating 20,000 a year
Yeah,
to 60,000 a year.
yeah.
So a year ago, possibly a year, last year, we would be looking at it going, we're losing $80,000 a year. Our balance just went from 100 to 20. What are we doing? And we'd be having the feasibility conversation a year ago. So,
Right, right. We're just having it with no money now.
right, and what we're talking about, and I think a line we have to thread is, how much of the $85,000 decision we made are we putting on people for 1 year?
See, that's
Yeah,
why I
and
said.
And I'm not advocating to do a lot. I think that.
I know you're not.
Yeah, I think we have to start the process and lay out a plan of what it's going to look like so that people can have an understanding of, for them, just like they're budgeting. In year 1, it's X, in year 2, it's
So
Y.
Terry, let me throw this out. Does 5% from December through, I know it's not June 30th, but June, December, oh, January, I'm sorry, January, I meant to say January. January through June, does that help? I know it brings extra money in, does that help? Enough?
I think
Not
nothing
enough.
helps. I feel like
It would
nothing
No,
helps.
it's not enough, but I'm saying,
And it depends on if we do anything to the salaries.
Right.
Right, because it would be half of what the 10% is.
Right.
Right.
no, my point, let me explain. One, as much as I want to help with the salaries, I just don't think, I think part of it is we
can't sustain
we
that.
kept people employed and we're in a difficult position because we did the right thing. As much as we want to give you a raise, we
agree.
can't give you a raise because otherwise the program's gone and then they're losing their employment.
So 5% is going to be approximately $10,000. So it's going to cut the projected loss from $65,000 to $55,000.
And 10% is only 20,000.
Right.
But it's something.
It
It's
is
a
something.
start.
It is a start, and it could be, I mean,
If
can
this
hash it out.
if this program is going to be kept, I think we are going to have to make a decision that we're going to have to subsidize this program to some number
For a certain number of years.
until they get to 150 to 160 kids,
Yeah.
which,
Well, we'd have to subsidize it $45,000 at the end of this year, unless you were able to bring in some new kids under the existing staffing structure.
so if we're going to subsidize to 45 to 50,000,
Where are we gonna find it?
well,
is a-
where are you
which is
going to
a-
find it?
which
But
is-
then also,
teacher salary.
right, but then also, then that's our answer of how much we are looking to try and solve in fee increases. Because we can't close 65. So how much are we going to subsidize?
65, closings, it would be 60% increase.
You're
No, I'm not
saying we
saying-
can't.
No, I know that, I'm just saying, but based on that $10,000, that's six, and no one's suggesting
Right.
that. I think the reality is we're looking at anywhere from 5 to 14, and what should we do? Is 10, we're not voting, we're talking. Is 10 too much?
I want to see the impact again.
It was less than $100 a month for full-time. That's what I was just trying to look at that.
Before school,
If you
5
do,
days?
if you do 5 days,
Well, the most one.
It's
the one
$12.88,
that
right?
The most are the
That's before
preschool
school,
wrap
5 days.
It would be $68 a month.
after school, it's 30. So it's,
So are they cumulative, or is the wrap when you go both before and after?
yeah, what's oh, that's just
That's just
No, that's preschool.
That's
Before school, 5 days would be $12.88, and then after school, 5 days, let's just assume, is $30.90. So
So it's 40.
13 and 31,
$44.
$44.
a month.
A month,
Right.
times, how many months?
5 months.
Well, it's gonna be, 5.
No, for this, for
and
next
a
year,
half.
it'll be 5 months.
Yeah,
A little less than
Oh,
5.
yeah.
$200.
How much? 200?
I don't want to be cavalier with people's money,
No, I know.
but I think that that's not,
And that's only for one child. Some kids.
Yep.
some
And there
people
is still the
have-
option,
Some people have more than one kid in the program.
yeah. And there's still the option of, much in the way like lunch, when we used to pay for lunch. You can, if it's a hardship, then there's, based on thresholds, right? No, not for extended day?
no, this is not a program like kindergarten, it's not an educational program. It's an
Oh,
optional
so
program.
we don't have- we don't have
we don't have
Oh,
the,
I stand corrected. Okay, I take that back. Thank you,
Mm.
Terry.
all right, how about this? How about, does anyone have any additional data or information they need from Terry ahead of our vote? Because we'll put this on
Can you just
in
put
action.
5%? Can you model out 5%?
yeah,
for-
it's easy for me to model out 5%,
Thank you.
and I've actually got some notes here as well. So I've got some of Mark's questions, and I've sort of, I've got, I kind of want to just go back. I don't think it's that hard for me to pull the data. I kind of want to see what the enrollment of the school was and how that ties in,
Yeah,
to see that.
so this will be an
And then,
action item.
I want
on
to try to project out some fees.
Yep.
10, or no, 11, whatever, 11.8.
11.8.
I just don't think we can assume we're going to get back to pre-pandemic levels of kids. People don't have to go, People
I
aren't in
agree.
the office 5 days a week.
I agree with you.
I,
I
yes.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't see this being a break-even program.
So to your
Can
point,
you tell us where we're gonna find 50 grand? Like, where's the money gonna come from to cover this program
Well,
this year? Well, not right this second, but next time, like, what are we gonna do to cover the?
well, I think the first
Terry
thing I
has
need
a
to know
money
is know what
tree
I'm working
somewhere.
with, and then,
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying, like, can you look and see, like, what we
Yes.
can find it? Like, that's my.
and actually, you know what, Terry, to put pressure on you, I think you need to come back with us, come back to us, not just with the would you say 5%, Carrie?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
5% modeled up. Robin's point of where can we find that money, and is this a sustainable? Are we gonna be able to find X that delta every year, or are we just getting through this year? I don't wanna shutter this program, but I just don't, I have concerns. We need to treat the people that are in there now and the staff, we need to get them to the end of the year, we will. We have to, there's no other option. It's about what do we do?
well, I think that's why I also mentioned, I think certainly, I would like to say it's a, yes. I would hope that no later than early April, we can hopefully come to some decisions, because
Oh, I
Depending on-
think we'll know.
depending on what decisions we
I
make.
think we're
that
gonna
could-
know at budget time.
Yeah, I think depending on what decisions we make, that could impact staff, so.
Yes. And Dave, is anyone watching this?
No.
He chuckles, his chuckle tells me, one!
One.
Oh, that's me, I have enough.
Okay, so if someone may look at this,
I'd like to see how
if
many-
word on the street is that we're talking about this, there's a commitment by this committee to make this program live, but we have to be real, we're not looking to shut this thing down. We're trying and working hard to try to keep it going.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that early in the year, we had rather passionate parents who, wanted us to treat this like it was a teacher, and were complaining to Tana about how come we didn't treat it that way, and of course, Tana's not in charge of the program. So, I mean, we do know there's some passion around the program.
I can understand that.
So, and as you say, some of you certainly participated in it, so, but it does have to be viable.
All right, so
All right,
give us our.
Thank you.
Give us our budget shortfall memo first, and then this.
do I have another budget,
No, the thing we need to get to FinCom, the sped.
yes, the sped.
We're not calling it a deficit, Terry.
Out of district tuition.
Out of situation.
That's correct. All right,
Thank you, Terry.
Mr.
Thank you.
Mulaney, anything else, or did we cover everything on your list? I think we
I
did.
think we've covered everything. Do have a brief executive session.
Yes, brief.
For contract. There's no memo. All right. For that.
All right, I will take a motion, as there's no other business, to go into executive session for contract negotiations for union and non-union personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote, as we're not coming back into session. I am an aye. Ms. Gibbons?
Aye.
Ms. Briggs?
Aye.
Mr. Conroy?
Aye.
Ms. Roach?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Okay, we will see you on the 8th of November.